this was a good week of chapters, with many of them having a one-sided fight in some way, shape, or form, and with this being the last chapter of One Piece for at least a month. So let's see how it left us for this month. So we're starting off with One Piece, chapter 1053, and this was a great chapter showing a rapid-fire succession of information as well as celebration for the end of the Wano arc. So the chapter itself shows that the Gorosei were not thrilled with the fact that Luffy's bounty still had D on it, as well as the photograph, and we get to see what those bounties are, being that Law, Kid, and Luffy are now 3 billion berries each, meaning that theoretically they are all at a Yonko level, but only one of them got that esteemed prize. Now we cut around to, again, Wano is celebrating and partying with the chefs at the palace making some elaborate giant meal, and with only Jinbei sticking around for said meal as everyone else went to party in the streets and enjoy themselves. We get to see many shots of everyone having fun in the streets and Festival of Wano to celebrate their victory. At the same time, we see that Green Bull is going around taking care of people. He invades Udon Prison, where King and Queen were, and we find out that Green Bull's power is that of some sort of plant devil fruit. So, like the nature fruit, if I was gonna give a guess at what it would be. So, he is very powerful, and he even states as such, saying that the admiral shouldn't be struggling with nothing more than pirate crew members, showing that Green Bull is the type that is very powerful, showing that at least the admirals are above Yonko commander level to some degree, as one could kind of make that point with how the admirals weren't 100% struggling against a lot of Whitebeard's crew. They only jumped in when a lot of the tougher opponents arrived, but even then they weren't full on going all out, from at least what I can gather. So Green Bull takes care of them and shows that he's not a good guy per se. He's a bit more of an evil marine, quote unquote, as he seems just to want the admiration of Akainu, which is interesting as he plans to get Luffy. So then it cuts back to the party with the celebration ramping up to fireworks, and Kid plans on killing Luffy to take his place as a Yonko, which I think is rather funny, as everything is about to go upside down and all over the place in terms of different battles, as Green Bull is approaching the capital to take care of the pirates. We then get the entirety of who the new 4 Emperors of the Sea are, and it's Shanks, Blackbeard, Luffy, and the most ridiculous of them all, Buggy. And the fact that he's a Yonko is both hysterical and the most intriguing thing of the chapter, because now we have to know what he did. How did he get there, of all places? And what could have possibly happened to put him as an Emperor of the Sea? So that's incredibly funny. As well as we get the revelation that Robin lied to Crocodile, and that the poneglyph in Alabasta actually read that Pluton was in Wano, and that the Tengu blacksmith was actually Odin's father this whole time, but he couldn't reveal himself after he had survived in the place where the poneglyph is for several years. And so he reveals that Pluton is in fact in Wano, and I'm just one bombshell after the other in this chapter, as that was almost swept aside by the news that Luffy and Buggy are now emperors of the sea. So we have a lot of ridiculousness on the horizon, and it should be very fun to see what other bombshells are going to be dropped within the next few chapters, but that is for future us to find out, as One Piece will once again, as I said earlier, be off for the remainder of this month and into most of next month, as it's a month break. So it'll be speculation all over the place on what happens next, but for now we were left with quite the few bombshells, quite the few developments, and a tantalizing battle that is on the horizon, with Green Bull going to most likely wreak havoc in the capital. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter an A. It was very good seeing all the new different information, seeing the continued celebration, as well as the ridiculous nature of everything going nuts just after a nuts ending to the arc, with the fact that now the Pirate Alliance is going to try to kill each other for the title of Emperor, as well as the Marines are seemingly going to attempt to invade, as well as Green Bull letting slip that the rest of the world is a mess right now. So I can only imagine what happened with the other warlords. I'm assuming Boa either escaped her island with her pirate crew, but Amazon Lily is now under the control of the Marines, the world government, with only Boa having escaped, probably wounded in some way, and missing a sister, if I were to guess, just to add to the tragedy of Boa Hancock. Then we have Mihawk, who's probably carving his way through Marines, though I wouldn't be surprised if Oda pulled a twist that Mihawk was overwhelmed by the Marine forces and captured, put into Impel Down, probably next to Doflamingo, if he was caught. If not, he's probably still just carving up the oceans, maybe actually having a crew. Weevil's probably still running around causing mass hysteria and mayhem. Buggy is now elevated to Emperor, and I don't remember who else was Warlord. So again, the rest of them are probably causing all sorts of havoc, mayhem, and destruction, let alone any other pirates that are still hunting for the One Piece. New rookies that are causing more and more problems, guys involved with Luffy, the Grand Pirate Fleet causing all sorts of issues, as well as there was a joke that was going around that I saw, which I thought was very funny, is that now there's speculation that the pirate that Shanks was talking about with the Gorosei was in fact Buggy and not, say, Blackbeard or Luffy, which I think would be hysterical, as there are two major paths Shanks's character could go. Either he is one of the cutest characters, having it that he still wants to see Laughtail with Buggy, and so had to elevate Buggy to Emperor so that he would make it to the New World and get to the One Piece. Something like that, which I think would be hysterical if true, and Shanks is the ultimate good guy, or he's a heinous villain and the worst character in the entire series, as in bad, even worse than Blackbeard, and he'll be the ultimate evil everyone has to defeat in the end, just showing how powerful he is. So it'll be interesting to see which way that goes, but with this new revelation of Buggy's newfound influence and power, it'll be interesting to see how much of Shanks's influence caused that glow up of power. So now we're on to Undead Unluck, chapter 115, and this was a good chapter showing the end of the battle between Andy and Nico, as we got more flashback and more desperate fighting from both Andy and Nico, especially towards the end, and we learn more about what they were trying to do, as it seems as though Nico and Juiz, to a degree, had began to realize that they were going to run out of members of the Union, as each of them kept dying to various things, and or they just needed more manpower. And so Nico and his wife were trying to make clones, in a manner of speaking, that he can control. But the science wouldn't let it work, as the clones seemingly didn't have a soul to reanimate the corpses of those before, the people who died. And it seems as though Nico's wife had some sort of issue that she was dying, not necessarily from unsleep, but something else. So he was trying to prevent that, and again, he's all messed up from his own abilities and everything else, probably caring, quote-unquote, too much and willing to sacrifice quite a bit to have his loved ones back. So we have then Andy figuring out that every time he destroys the lab, it causes pain to Nico, as it seems as though the lab they're in is kind of Nico's database, as he has too many memories, quote unquote, in his head, as he can't forget anything. So he has to more or less remove them to make room for more. And every time the lab is destroyed, those memories get implanted back into him, overloading him, I'm assuming, or it's causing him to forget. I don't know, because he got more sluggish as the fight went on, and Andy took advantage of that, attacking the lab after it seemed he was completely caught, as well as seemingly ignoring the abilities of some of the clones of those who weren't dead. For example, Void and Gina, I think that was her name, the force field woman. They were more powerful than the clones of Juiz and Chikara because they were actually dead. So Uma Ghost was able to implant their actual quote-unquote soul or ghost form into the clones. So I'm assuming their power was more powerful for it, where the ones like Chikara and Juiz were not as powerful as they're not dead. So again, Andy destroys the facility and it causes Nico great pain, as once again Andy is killing everyone he knows, which is such an interesting way of doing this, where he's willing to destroy everything in one timeline and more or less be a villain to save the last timeline, which I think is extraordinarily interesting to see how this goes. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good getting the conclusion of this battle between Nico and Andy, as well as it seems that Uma Ghost was defeated at the same time, so I'm assuming Andy will get Fuko here, as they then will rush to the round table, as he then gives Fuko his points, puts her onto the other timeline, which then will more or less have her travel back in time to earlier in her life, I'm assuming, or at some point, I have no idea, and then we get the adventures of either Fuko or the adventures of Andy as he's trying to save everyone from falling into their darkest point in time. So the next few arcs should be very interesting to see who's saved, who's not, and how this goes, because I can imagine Andy making some tough calls. If he can't save everyone, then he'll make sure that they aren't in Fuko's life. He'll take that burden because he can. There's some grim dark stuff that could happen, but it also could be a very hero heavy series where Andy does in fact save the day and Fuko does too for everyone. So there's a lot of intrigue going into the next few chapters, as we have to see who gets saved for the next timeline and who doesn't, in a manner of speaking. So now we're on to Mashle, Magic and Muscles, chapter 112. And this was a great chapter because we got to see the overwhelming might of Innocent Zero's children. The beginning of the chapter shows that the world before Adam Jobs was basically a bunch of small countries vying for power. Eventually, two-lined mages really caused the power shift, and then ultimately Adam Jobs caused the unification of the world under basically his rule, and it said he was the first divine visionary. He was that powerful, really gassing up the divine visionaries to make them seem unstoppable, only for the next panel to show that each one of them was defeated by Innocent Zero's children, and the Innocent Zero's children were unfazed completely. Now, these were the quote-unquote fodder divine visionaries. These weren't the ones we had known of, really. But it's still relatively shocking to see them go down so easily into such seemingly gruesome wounds, as none of them did really anything to the Innocent Zero family. They were all soundly defeated and in shocking fashion then put on display to prove Innocent Zero's point that nothing can stop him, and he now employs the populace to find Mash and bring him to Innocent Zero. Melodol's assistant seemingly tries to leave Melodol's service to then go and join Innocent Zero. Melodol beats him up before trying once again to bring Mash back to save the day, which I think will be hysterical. So I wonder where the next few chapters go, because given how things are going, I'm assuming the whole populace will go to Melodol's clinic, try to stop her, but if I had to guess, I would assume all of our quote-unquote main characters come in to try to stop them, eventually have to fight Innocent Zero's children, as well as the different monsters, and we'll see if they succeed where the other Divine Visionaries did not. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter an A, just for the shocking fact that all of the Divine Visionaries have lost to the Innocent Zero children, and leaving it that the villains are very much on top. I thought those battles would be a bit closer, but seeing the absolute victory of the villains was indeed an interesting choice that I'm very curious to see what the author decides to do next. Will be very interesting, especially given the fact that we haven't seen any of our quote-unquote main characters yet. So I'm imagining the next phase of battles is all of our main characters stepping up one by one, or multiple on one of Innocent Zero's children, and we'll see how they fare compared to the divine visionaries that already failed, who are now being tortured and on display. So we'll see how the next few battles go, as Mash is still being healed by Melodol. Now we're on to Sakamoto Days, chapter 75, and this was a good chapter, showing more of Sakamoto and Shin breaking into the GCC, seeing more of Sakamoto and Shin trying to find where the database is in the JCC, as well as we learn the fact that the database is seemingly some sort of urban legend at JCC, as Hizaki points out, because he actually went there, and he and Sakamoto confirmed that each one had a different rumored place at where the database would be. So it'd be very interesting to see how they find it. And in this chapter, we see that Sakamoto's costumed transformations already starting to fade, so it's going to be funny to see how he maintains himself for this, as he once again displays more of his skill and shows that he's seemingly slowing down a little bit, which I don't think he loves, as the next class for Akira is a gun shooting class, and their task was to build a gun and shoot as many bullets as they can in under a minute, and many of the students couldn't even build the gun quickly enough. Some could, but no one did anything spectacular. The teacher asked the disguised Sakamoto to show a demonstration, but the teacher thought he would humiliate Sakamoto because he thinks Sakamoto is a woman. Sakamoto then does the whole thing and shoots 87 shots, or 67 something, a high number, off in under a minute, and they check the leaderboard, and Sakamoto was number one with 89, but now he was second because Hisaki was able to do it faster and nearly get 100 shots off. But he forgot to put his name, so now there's an urban myth about Hisaki, which is very funny. We then see Shin, who is hiding out in a bathroom because he's checking off all the different things a typical high schooler would do, which I think is hysterical, as another class of students who are looking for another engineering type who had been messing with their stuff because he thinks he's better than everyone, comes looking for that other student, ends up finding Shin being giddy by all of the different tropes he's doing, beats him up after the bullying student ends up starting to get into the face of Shin. Shin then finds the student in question that was sneaking away from that other group of engineering students, and we find out that it's the invisible guy from the beginning of the story that had stolen Lo thinking it was Shin. So now we get another character we know about and see what he's been up to for a while, which should be very fun, as well as maybe getting a new companion-esque character, as I can only imagine this invisible guy ends up helping the Sakamoto crew, which would be great and really funny. So that was the chapter. Overall, I think I'll give this one a B. It was good seeing the continued search for this database that they've been hearing about, as it has all sorts of different things, as well as seeing everyone trying and ultimately failing to find it, from Sakamoto continuing making his list of people who keep gawking at his wife, even though it's him, and demonstrating his own skill, but seeing he's lost a step through retirement, as well as seeing Shin living out his dream of being a typical high schooler despite him being older, which I think is fairly funny, and seeing a familiar face as a villain now turned potential ally and or rival, I guess, to Shin. So that was all of the chapters. They were all very good this week, with One Piece being the particular standout of all of them, but Mashle being extremely fun in my opinion, just by the overwhelming defeat of our hero characters by the villains. Undead Unluck was also good, with a more or less one-sided fight that kept switching back and forth, from dominating performance by Nico to ultimate victory by Andy. And Sakamoto was more investigating, with a bully character being completely destroyed by Shin, showing his overwhelming strength as of now compared to the beginning. So now for everything else, we had Jujutsu Kaisen, which was fine, My Hero, which was fine, Blue Box, which was again fine. Nothing really to speak about on any of these chapters. They were all good in their own regard. Nothing overly interesting about really any of them, in my opinion. Nothing I really feel like talking about in any way. Earthchild was fine. The only real interesting thing was the fact that it seems as though the main character might die here in exchange for his wife, but I'm not sure how they're going to play that. But everything seemed lost. They eventually seemingly connected, but then for whatever reason, the universe is just against them and is trying to kill everyone just all the time, and the main character takes the risk to really rejuvenate his wife's power and save her while ultimately sacrificing himself. We'll see if this sparks the series forward or if it's ending in 2 to 3 chapters. Mission Yuzakura Family was good. We had the finishing battle between Momo and the main character and the eldest brother. The ability between Momo and the eldest brother is very much small, where the main character isn't even close. But ultimately, he gets away, and the head of the spy association now is calling for the whole family to meet with him to discuss what to do next with the father, it seems, with Momo. So that should be interesting. The next few chapters should be fun, as this is the most consistent amount of main plot moving chapters that I've seen in quite some time. So I'm curious to see where the story goes. The Elusive Samurai was good. It continued its plot forward, and we learned that the god character's son was apparently in real life also a real nobody that no one can find anything about, because his father, the god character, was very potent and was seemingly prominent in history, and his son was also potent and prominent in history. However, he, the son of the god character, was not very prominent at all. So it's very funny that kind of gave him some more character, though he's still not as radiant as his father. But we get to see a bit of a battle there, as well as the fact that everything's moving well, and it seems as though the one character who was like the governor of the area, who's a real coward, who needs sort of siege equipment just to protect himself, made another ginormous siege weapon just to attack on the battlefield. So we'll see how well that works, if it does. But it is very intimidating to see a borderline tank take the field. P times 6 was good, as we see the different teams being assembled from Lucky's team of siblings and the one guy who's been teaching him how to analyze music, versus the villain team of the villain brother, the one brother who is exposing the family to everyone, who seemingly wants to push Lucky by being a kind of villainous character, and the girl who is the rival of Mimon is actually joining the quote-unquote villains team. And it'll be very interesting to see how this competition goes, mostly because the villain side plans on continuously pushing Lucky into competitions to lose and eventually give up on being a pianist, where the hero team is seemingly trying to encourage Lucky. I'm very curious to see how this goes, because I could imagine Lucky simply understanding what the other brother was saying and stop pushing everyone to do this, or this, and just simply listening to the music or something. The character arc could be very interesting for what Lucky does, win, lose, or draw in this next competition, though I imagine the competition itself will be starting fairly soon. So the next few chapters of that should be very fun, seeing if the competition starts, if it's a training bit, whatever it is, there should be some fun to be had. Doron was fine. We got to see more of the top samurai officers, the most powerful of powerful, as well as the current and former heads of the whole samurai association, the Mononoke, like, elimination association. It's revealed that they plan on getting rid of this one person to get rid of all the Mononoke, but that includes Dora's Mononoke sword friend. So we'll see how they have to balance that. Is it for the greater good? Is it whatever? We'll see. It was a good chapter. Bunch of intrigue going forward, as all the characters are once again fairly interesting. Aliens area was good, as we got to meet more of the quote-unquote main characters, as we get to see the main character and his kind of mentor character. The mentor character's team, We got to see them, meet them, see who they are, as well as see that the main character is starting to understand his alien arm to some degree. Super Smartphone was actually the most intriguing chapter outside of the main ones, really, for me, only because the chapter itself was just a back and forth between quote-unquote smart characters battling wits one way or the other, trying to outmaneuver each other, and we got to see that the main villain of the whole series, seemingly, was able to outplay our main character and expose his power and influence to show that he is on a different level than anyone else and wants to have a physical meeting, while in truth wants to dominate everyone. So it should be fairly interesting to see how this story goes, as each one's trying to outmaneuver the other. So this one so far has actually been a surprisingly good series, and I wonder how much further it'll go before it either ends or shifts into a completely different tone, destroying what originally made it interesting. So I'm curious at what it'll do. So that was all of the chapters. They were all, again, very good, with many standouts and many intriguing plot lines going in various directions. With One Piece out, I might put Yazakura family into the kind of main quote-unquote slot point for a while, just to really add something, as of course 2 series takes a month-long break at the same time. But hopefully Black Clover is back soon and there won't be really an issue. But for now, we've got some interesting stuff on the horizon, and even beyond that, with now Chainsaw Man returning in July, which should be exciting for all the reasons. So I look forward to seeing that and anything else. And so with that, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and as always, thank you for watching.